Hillary Clinton makes history, becoming the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee, but Bernie Sanders vows to fight on for what he calls an American revolution. What does his words "fight on" mean exactly, and what's next for his campaign and his supporters? Let's find out with Cenk Uygur, host of the online news and commentary show, The Young Turks, founder and CEO of the TYT network, vocal Bernie Sanders supporter and defender. And he joins me here in studio. You had to be brought down by the California size of that defeat. Where are you now?
So, first of all, Hillary Clinton was likely to win the pledged delegates comfortably, even if Bernie Sanders had won California. So it's not like we didn't know going into the night that it wasn't going to be a great night no matter what. I am surprised at the size of the California win for Hillary Clinton. I don't know how much it had to do with the Associated Press and the rest of the press saying, don't show up to vote, this race is already over.
Well, AP didn't say don't show up.
I mean, by declaring the race over, that is in effect what you're saying. In fact, they had record registration, more people signing up to vote, but then it was actually 28% lower turnout than in 2008. That's because every press outlet said, this race is already over, this race is already over. You know that if the press declares a race over, less people are going to show up to vote.
Okay. But still, why does Bernie said on Tuesday, the struggle continues. We're going to fight hard to win the primary in Washington, D.C., and we take our fight for social, economic, racial, and environmental justice to Philadelphia. What does taking the fight mean?
Okay, so I'll give you my interpretation because I don't speak for Bernie Sanders. So she has won a lot more pledged delegates. If all things being equal, she's got more superdelegates, more pledged delegates, the race is over, she's won, right? Now, there is one wild card where, because things are not normal, she is under federal investigation, and so there might be an indictment. I have no idea what the chances of that indictment are. People think, oh, by bringing it up, you're rooting for it. No, the FBI isn't listening to the Young Turks going, I wonder if we should act based on what they say. I'm just telling you that there's some chance that that happens, and if it does, well, then that would be a giant wild card. And then, because the very last election is the superdelegate election. They have not voted yet. They vote on July 25th. If there's an indictment between here and there, then they would get to say, okay,
of course,
you know.
Why doesn't Bernie, at least, if that happens, that happens? Why doesn't he make peace now, bring the party together? Because the last thing he wants is a Trump presidency.
That's certainly true. And we don't know what he means by carrying on the campaign. My suggestion was to suspend the campaign with reserving the right to re-enter if there's an indictment. Now, it's ironic because he doesn't like talking about the indictment. He thinks that's too much of an attack against Hillary Clinton. So on the other hand, the most important part of this, and to the point of your first question, it means we are going to fight for progressive ideas no matter what. Whether we win the delegate count, whether we win the primary or not, whether we win the election or not, no matter what happens, this political revolution continues.
Well, don't you have enough clout to put a lot into the platform?
So the platform is somewhat relevant. Normally it's usually irrelevant because they'll put it into a platform and then the politicians won't look at it for another 4 years. In this case, the platform might be a little bit relevant because Bernie Sanders wants policy positions, not a higher position for himself. So he might say, hey, listen, the Democratic Party has to fight for $15 minimum wage. And he's likely to win that fight. And the more power he has, the more power he can use for those progressive policy positions. On universal health care, is the Democratic Party going to go, okay, you win, Bernie, we'll go for universal health care? Probably not. So, and that's the fight that's going on now. How progressive will the Democrats be? That's why Bernie Sanders supporters are so excited when he says the struggle continues, because that means I'm going to continue to fight for your priorities.
You've accused various media outlets, including CNN, of being anti-Bernie. What do you mean?
So, a very clear example, although I can give you dozens of examples. When they counted the superdelegates from day one, full well knowing they don't vote till July 25th, full well knowing they could switch to another candidate as they did in 2008. And they put up on the screens, Hillary Clinton has a 90-10 advantage. And then they would say, New Hampshire, Bernie Sanders wins by 22 points, but it's the equal delegate count. So it was a way to mislead the audience to make it seem as if Hillary Clinton had a giant lead, which she didn't have. And so that gives you a giant bias in favor of Hillary Clinton. People like to vote for the winner. People don't show up if they think that it's not a real contest, et cetera. So, and I'm asking the question, why did they do that? Why did they put their thumb on the scale in favor of Hillary Clinton?
I worked there for 26 years. I think I had a pretty good impact at CNN. I have never, in all those years, seen a conversation about playing up someone or playing down someone.
I totally agree.
Let's focus more on this than on that. So who's doing this?
So that's a great question,
There's
Larry.
no plot there.
That's right. I totally agree with that. So some people think, oh, well, I think that they sit in a smoke-filled room and they go, no such thing, right? But it is the decisions of management. So if you put Anderson Cooper on the air and you put Wolf Blitzer on the air, and you have told people, hey, don't rock the boat. These guys don't rock the boat. That's why they're on the air. So, for example, I'm on MSNBC. I go after the establishment. At some point, they have a conversation with me, and they tell me, literally in my case, don't attack the establishment this much, right? And then when I do, then they go, okay, we're going to move you to the weekends. See, so that's how it works. It's not like, hey, we're all going to conspire. It's I'm going to make a series of decisions that will lead to a pro-establishment bias. And if anyone doesn't agree with the establishment, they're not right for us. We're going to move them off the air.
So you think that Time Warner, which owns CNN, doesn't want Bernie? They don't want a socialist in the office? You think that's where it goes up that high?
Yes and no. Again, Larry, it's not that I don't think even Time Warner executives communicate to anyone, we don't like Bernie. I think that their natural bias is, hey, wait a minute, I need to have my merger approved with Comcast. I like lower taxes. I like lower regulation. This Bernie Sanders, so I'm going to hire people accordingly. That when they look at Occupy Wall Street, go, these kids, what are they doing? They're meddlesome and they're annoying, etc. They don't look at it as like, wow, what an interesting American uprising. They've hired everyone in management and on air to make sure that they don't rock the boat, so that when a Bernie Sanders comes along, their natural reaction is, Bernie Sanders, socialist, liberal senator. No, that's not the guy. That's not the guy. Their instinct, their gut reaction is Hillary. And in fact, Jeb Bush, yes. Marco Rubio, yes. Donald Trump, no. And oops, you were wrong, weren't you? Because there is a populist uprising.
On both sides?
On both sides.
If Hillary is the nominee, will you support her?
So that depends on what you mean.
What do you mean, what do I mean?
Okay,
two people running.
No, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe not. So the Libertarians are already polling at 10%. And nobody knows who Gary Johnson is, and he's already at 10%. The Green Party's already polling at 4%. And that's before any big names have come into the race. So this race might be unlike anything we've covered, Larry. There might be 3 people in the race. There might be 5 people in the race.
Well, the Libertarian and Green Party are on the ballot in all states.
That's right.
You can't get on the ballot in... an independent candidate can't get on the ballot in all states at this juncture. That's
right, but we just recently looked into it on the Young Turks, and it turns out they can still get on, even at this late juncture, in most of the relevant states. So yes, it would hurt them not to be on some of the smaller states, but there's still time.
You wouldn't want it to be a Ralph Nader who cost Al Gore the election.
So now
you'd want a conservative to independent. If you have a liberal independent running, then you're electing Trump.
So again, that's why I say it depends on the context. If there's only 3 people in the race, I definitely want a second conservative to split their vote, okay? If there's 5 people in the race, well, that's an entirely different dynamic. Then you might be able to get a plurality for a real strong liberal. But even so, it would go to the House to decide, because then no one would get an electoral majority, and the House is Republican.
Old House or the new House?
It's the old House. So we know for a fact it would be these House Republicans who would decide. So you have to take all of that into account. So no, I don't want Donald Trump in the White House under any circumstance, but it does depend on the context of the race, which we don't fully know yet.
But you certainly, collectively, progressives don't want Trump. No. And it would be obvious if it was only Hillary versus Trump, you'd hurt yourself to sit home. So it's obvious to me. It's not obvious to all my viewers. So last month we had 86 million unique viewers online. So it's a big part of the voting bloc in this country now. And some of them are Bernie or bust. Some of them are never Hillary. And some of them will listen to me or some of the other hosts, and some of them won't.
So my point of view, and I've already said this, I said it right after the New York election, and a lot of them criticized me for it. My own viewers criticized me for it. I said, if it's Hillary or Trump, that's not a close question for me. I'm going to vote for Hillary.
Do you know why people, why do they hate Hillary?
That I can tell you.
Dislike, why do you hate a person who has the best credentials ever to run for president? If it were a resume and you were interviewing two people, come on.
Yeah.
Look at her resume.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But let me make 2 points about that. One, when you look at her resume, you say, wow, she's worked at all these incredible positions. Absolutely true. But then I'm an employer. I'm the CEO of TYT Network. The second thing I ask when I look at that resume is, yes, but what did you do in those positions? So
she's a pretty good senator, liked by the senators. She worked well with other senators.
No, see, so number one, she says, I've got great foreign policy experience. I go, okay, what judgment did that lead you to? You voted for the Iraq War. Disastrous. I mean, it couldn't be a bigger disaster. Then, you've got Libya. You've got consistently a more hawkish position than President Obama.
She's more hawkish than Trump.
That's right. And so as a progressive, I do not agree with that. So your experience, in my estimation, has led you in the wrong direction. So if I looked at you and you worked at IBM and I go, wow, that's an amazing job, and then I look further and it says, oh, you bankrupted IBM, well, then I'm not as excited about your experience. But the second part is even more important, Larry. She is, in our estimation, she's for no change. She is the establishment. And we're sick of the establishment, and a huge percentage of the American people...
You don't like the Obama presidency?
No. So I think President Obama went for incremental change, and in some areas he got incremental change. In a lot of areas he got no change at all, and he certainly did not go for the type of change
he had a Congress that was out to beat him from the first day.
Both true and untrue. Remember, in the beginning he had a supermajority. So that's where we got a vision into what does he want to accomplish. So, he had, just health care. And even that was so limited, no public option, let alone universal health care. The maximum of his dreams was, let's go a little bit towards progressive values, but not too much. You remember, Affordable Care Act was the same as Mitt Romney's plan in Massachusetts.
Exactly.
And that was from the Heritage Foundation in the 1990s. So the maximum of your progressive dreams was something that the Heritage Foundation, a right-wing think tank, came up in the 1990s. I'm not impressed by that change. So, no, the establishment, look, and Larry, the most important part of it is we've got to get the money out of politics. If we don't get the money out, they're all going to work for the same people, the donors, whether it's Obama, Hillary, or the Republicans.
Have to overturn the Supreme Court, which put the money into politics.
That's right. So you have to fight for an amendment. The only thing above the Supreme Court is an amendment. So do you think that Hillary Clinton's going to fight aggressively for that amendment? I would be shocked. No, she loves the system. This is the system that made the Clintons rich, powerful, and all the things they ever wanted. She has shown no indication that she would get money out of politics. That's what got her all her success.
What did you make of Trump? What did you make of the Trump University controversy?
So there's one thing that people are missing about Trump. Everybody knows he's racist, he's bigoted, he's all the things that people have listed about him. That's overwhelmingly obvious. What people are missing is that he's actually enormously incompetent. And he's bankrupted 4 companies. He says, oh, I did it for business reasons. You know what's a better business reason? To make a profit. Like, that's a better way to go in business, is make a profit instead of bankrupting yourself 4 different times. Larry, he's running for president after the Iowa caucus, which, as you know, is monumentally important. He said, oh, they tell me there's this thing called a ground game. Of course there's a ground game where you get out the vote and you have supporters on the ground, your staffers organizing for you. What kind of incompetent schmuck goes into a presidential race and doesn't know what a ground game is?
So how did he win?
Because his one gift, and he's an idiot savant of marketing. Man, he's great at marketing. Everything else he's grossly incompetent in. But if you want to talk about getting your name out there, nobody does it better than Trump.
On Tuesday night, Mr. Trump spoke directly to you, and he said to Bernie Sanders supporters who feel left out in the cold, join me. He was talking to you, Cenk.
Yeah, well, I'll talk right back. Hell no. So Donald Trump, again, people think he caught that populist wave on the right-wing side, partly because he stopped saying dog whistle phrases and just said the things that some of the bigoted Republicans wanted to hear. I'm against Mexicans, I'm against Muslims, blacks, women, whatever, etc. But they're missing a huge part of it. The other part was, he said, I'm not taking money from these lobbyists. I talk to people all the time, and they say to me, if they're Trump supporters, more than half the time, they don't mention any of the things about the wall or etc. They say, he's not taking the money. I'm so sick of the politicians that take the money and do as they're told. And so he caught that same populist wave, but he's not going to do anything about it.
He's also taking money.
Now he's going to take money. He doesn't promise to change the system at all. Amendment or legislation. He doesn't even know what that is, let alone raising his hand and saying, I'll fight for that. By the way, if he was savvy, he would pretend to fight for it, but he's not even savvy enough to figure that out.
Are you going to the Democratic Convention?
Yes, definitely.
Cenk, great having you with us.
Absolutely, Larry. Thank you.
So hard to draw him out. It's so every time he comes, it's just whamby-pamby, nothing. Cenk Uygur, hell of a guy.